individuals to my left, who will be speaking starting in just a moment or so, are among, if not the, forgotten face of this issue. All of these individuals have the experience of having, or having had, a loved one on death row. We don't normally think about the loved ones, the family members of those who are on death row.
My brother's name is Luis Castro Perez. He is an innocent man on death row. He was falsely accused of murdering 3 of his friends in September of 1998. We have always believed that it was the railroad serial killer, and his name was Angel Maturino Resendiz, and we are still fighting to this day to prove that he was indeed the person that killed the girls. He did confess on 2 occasions, and he also told an inmate that he saw my brother bending over one of the bodies that day. So we will continue to fight and hopefully bring my brother home, and that's, you know, that's kind of where our family is at. I asked my dad to think about buying a plot, and he said, I'm not planning a burial, I'm planning my son to come home, so he wouldn't have any talk. I'm sure that you girls will agree that you are in shock, and the first couple of years, there's really not much you can do. Mentally, emotionally, and physically and psychologically, you're so beaten down by this that you don't really have a chance to come up for air. It's just getting through the daily routine. Together, we can abolish the death penalty, and even though we still have executions every other day, I know that we can do it. I know that we can do it, and it's going to take every single one of us. It is war. It is a battle. We're just talking about, we are angry. We are furious. We are livid. We cannot take it from day to day what's going on in our lives, that somebody has taken one of yours and is going to shove a needle in his arm and put 3 different chemicals and kill them and take them. My brother was innocent. Does that matter anymore? There's 350 men on death row that they're fixing to do that to. We have got to stop it. Some of them are mentally ill, mentally retarded. There's so many. There's so many. Everybody has a story. Every case is different. Every single inmate is different. Many of them did commit their crimes, but really, should we be taking their lives? Should we be playing God?
It was a wake-up call. Lady Justice is not blind. I do not believe that anybody walks into a courtroom that they haven't already been. I mean, they're proving their innocence, not their guilt. There's no such legal system in the United States, as far as I'm concerned. We had lawyers who, when you think about it, being court appointed, they're going to be paid X amount of dollars. It doesn't matter whether they win or lose, they're still going to get the same amount. The people that guard the prisoners, I got news for you. They're not nice people. They're power hungry, and they love to mistreat the inmates. Once, 2 years ago, in late October, when a cold front came through, Adam didn't have a blanket. You're only allowed 1 blanket. I went to the death row warden, and I said, Adam doesn't have a blanket. Well, we passed them out yesterday. I said, well, they ran out. He says, I'll look into it. I said, well, will it be pretty soon? I told you I would look into it. 2.5 weeks later, Adam got his blanket. It's not a pretty situation there. The men there, you can see them, you can wave to them through the window, and you can tell if they made a mistake, they've gotten past it, they find peace. These guys help each other. There are a few that Adam will even say are not so kind, but for the most part, these guys are great guys, and they have found religion. There's a lady from the Salvation Army. She's 86 years old. She drives here every week. She gets there on Wednesday afternoon, spends the night at a motel, and sees ministers to the prisoners on Thursdays and Fridays, and she buys them snacks. She gets to be with them for about 2 hours, just like we do. And mind you, every time she gets through seeing one prisoner, she has to walk all the way back out to the guard gate to get the blue pass to come all the way back in. It's a long walk, and the woman is 86 years old. These people do not care. There is no consideration. So if there's no compassion. So if there's no compassion for an 86-year-old, you can think there's certainly not any compassion for the men that are on death row.
So I want to really just focus on what it was like for our family. So I'm just going to tell you our personal story and give you an idea of what this, the kind of impact that this has on families. My uncle was adopted by my grandparents when their 3 natural children were grown. And he was adopted when he was over a year old, and by that point he'd had 13 different caregivers in that first year of life. So I like to tell people that my uncle was not innocent of the crime for which he was executed, and he was not mentally ill per se, but I do think that he had certainly an attachment disorder and some other social issues. So while many mentally ill people are executed, there are also people who, though not innocent and not mentally ill, can't really be held completely accountable for their crimes as compared to somebody who came from different circumstances. He admitted his crime, and he was put on trial, and there was never any doubt about his guilt. And after the trial, he was sent to death row. He was of course, found guilty and then given the death penalty. And the trial was a really difficult thing for my family. He had been, because he was adopted when my grandparents' other children were older, he was sort of the baby of the family, and everybody just adored him and really wanted him to succeed, and they all invested so much in him. So it was really hard for them, especially, of course, for my grandparents. So the trial was especially traumatic for them. My grandfather, in fact, was called to testify against him and did so. And I remember that being a particularly difficult time for my family because, as you can imagine, it divided my family. We weren't given the courtesy of a phone call once the sentence was handed down, so we had to learn it from the news. So I vividly remember sitting in front of the television on my dad's birthday with all of his siblings and my grandparents in the room and learning that he was sentenced to death. And even though some in my family supported that decision, others in my family did not. And regardless of where anyone in our family stood on the sentencing and on his guilt, he was still the precious little boy that my grandparents had adopted. And he was my father's brother and my aunt's brother and my grandparents' little boy and my uncle. And he meant something to all of us at one time. So when they said that he would be sentenced to death, I remember that there must have been a dozen of us in that room, and nobody said a word. And everybody got up one by one and just went to different places in my parents' house. I went to my bedroom and closed the door and cried, and I assume that's what everybody else did too, but because there was such division in our family over his crime and such controversy over the issue, we weren't able to discuss it. We weren't able to support each other. So everybody just sort of went to their own little corners and dealt with it themselves. And I think that's really indicative of what we experience as family members. I think it's so different than what we experience when we lose a family member to illness or to accident. It's just completely different. My grandparents did not claim his body, so he was buried by the state of Texas. My parents and my sister went to the burial. It wasn't really a funeral. He was put into a pine box, and no one presided over it. No one. So the other thing that I want to leave you with is, as I mentioned, this was in 2000, so we're 10 years out, and I want to tell you that for my family, this has been a nightmare, because 10 years later, we're still feeling the effects in my family. We still are a family divided. I do not have a good relationship with my grandparents who are still living. They have a lot of resentment toward me for visiting Spencer. My father and I tolerate each other, but we also don't have a good relationship. He and my mother are still married, so we see each other often, but we don't really speak. And there, I think, are many reasons for that, but I think the underlying reason is that he is angry with himself, and he projects that onto me because I did what he wasn't able to do. So my main purpose in telling you all of that is to just underscore that this is something that creates an entire new set of victims, another set of innocent victims. Does not, there was no closure for us, and there has been no healing. Even 10 years down the road, we still are a family divided. And I tell my own children all the time that 2 wrongs don't make a right. And I feel like this was a situation in which the state of Texas tried to take 2 wrongs and make it right, and it definitely did not do so.
The death penalty is not an act. It is a very prolonged process that begins with some prosecutor and the decision to seek death, and you think it might end at the moment when the sentence is carried out, but it doesn't end. It is just a process. Condemned people have some rights. The right not to be tortured, the right not to be abused, the right not to be starved, the right not to have mock executions carried out against them. This happens in this country. It does happen it's not an aberration, it happens sadly on a routine basis. Many of the people, Teresa Lewis there were 61 women on death row. Well, a woman was sentenced to death today in Florida, so there are still 61. Part of these violations which occur, imagine, whatever your gender, every time you go in and out of your cell to see your lawyer, to see your family member, imagine, especially if you are a woman, where most states that have women on death row, they're isolated. There's only 1. Texas happens to have 10. To be strip searched, body cavity search. This is done, you can imagine how degrading and humiliating this is, regardless of your gender. Men work on death row where women endure this. Women guards are present when it is done to men. Handcuffed, naked, and body cavity searches. This is a serious issue. We are talking about a criminal justice system which allows this. This is legal in the United States. It is legal for women inmates to be shackled to gurneys to give birth in this country. So how can you be surprised if you're bringing a life into the world and shackled to a gurney? How can anybody be surprised when women especially have to undergo this indignity every time they leave a cell? Go take a shower, go exercise, go meet a family member, go meet your attorney. Is it any wonder that many of these men and women don't want to come out of their cell? They don't want to have this intrusiveness against them. But again, this is in part an educational issue because most people have no clue, none. And how could they if you don't have a loved one and you have no contact with what people are trying to go through? If you think that this issue cannot and will never touch your life, I would urge you to reevaluate that belief.